Okay, I will call the open session meeting to order. Before we approve the agenda, I believe we have one addition. That is to review the operational follow-up review of finance, human resource, and risk management. I'll add that as item 2A after approval of the agenda. Are there any other additions or changes? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
And seconded by Kathy, all in favor? Hey, okay. We will, Dennis, would you like to give us a overview of the operational review report provided by the school efficiency consultants?
The main thing that came out of it for me was the procedures and policies that needed updating, and the communications between HR and finance. Because when I first came, that was a sort of different for me as to the roles of what's in finance and what's in HR. And so this efficiency study sort of cleared some of that up for us, myself and Chris. Mm-hmm. And I would like to say, even prior to this report, a lot of the stuff that's in here, Chris and I had already started working on, because we both knew that something wasn't working. Mm-hmm. So my overview of this report was it really just brought to light stuff that him and I had already seen, mm-hmm. and had already started working on.
I'm assuming the members of the committee may have some specific questions, but I'm wondering, let me get your thoughts on this. Moving forward, would you like to prepare a response to this report, kind of a progress report, if you will? These specific items have already been implemented. Chris and I are working on this one. We can't do this one quite yet. That kind of a follow-up to where we are for these recommendations. Is that?
Yes, we could do that.
Best step? Okay.
That's the will of the board. We could do that.
Okay. All right. Did you get that, Joe and Leslie? I asked for a follow-up report from staff on the implementation of the recommendations and suggestions from the consultant, going progress report.
And I think that was one of the problems with the last one. The report was given, there was never an action taken from the report.
I'll take it even a step further. I never knew the report was done. It was never presented to the full board that there was a report, that even a firm had been retained to look at this area, let alone doing what the report suggested.
So Gary, I'd like to request that we add that as a standard agenda item for our finance. Wait, it doesn't fall off our radar, and see how we progress.
I think that's a very good suggestion, Joe. Does anyone have any at this point? Are there any specific items on this report that you would like to direct to staff specifically?
Yes, I have some stuff, but it would be good if at the next meeting you can kind of come back with what you asked for, with
yes,
follow up on where we are instead of going through my questions, because maybe once he does what you're asking, then
it's already done. Yeah.
Okay. So that would be great.
And I don't want to speak for Dennis, but I just asked him, does he need until March as the next time to come back and deliver on that? The response is no. We'll be ready in February to give an update, and it's fine to keep it as a standing agenda item.
Excellent. Okay. Then we'll note that for the agenda for the next meeting. And
I will get with Chris on his portion and have him to provide an update also.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Any other questions on that item?
And then you'll work with Michelle on what policy.
Definitely.
Right. And we'll get that to policy.
I saw the risk management.
Yep.
Was one of the things that last.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item, approval of the minutes from the December 1st meeting. Does anyone have any questions, suggested changes, et cetera?
I just have two little changes. Typos, taking out the word then and moving as amended to. So I make a motion, we approve the minutes as amended.
Can I get it?
Second.
Joe gets a second. All in favor? All right. Aye. Minutes are approved. Fund balance target.
Okay, I think what we were trying to, I guess, come up with a plan for fund balance and what to keep, what to use. So I made a couple of phone calls to Charlotte Mack and to the president of NCASBO to try to get a guide as to what other school districts do. And it was a gamut of what they do. There's really no set policy or procedures that anyone has because school boards in North Carolina are not taxing authorities. So there's no guideline to say you must have this as fund balance. But a general guideline that CMS uses and what the NCASBO president said was they use a percentage of the local appropriation, somewhere between 2 to 5%. And so 2% of our $5.7 million is about 1.9 million, so about $2 million. And I would recommend that we set our procedure, not a policy, procedure that we will try to maintain 2% of our local budget as unassigned fund balance.
2% of our total local budget, capital
Total.
and operating?
No, operating.
Just
total
operating.
Operating.
Okay, so that's about one. What was that number
It's
set for last?
1.92 million, 1.953 round is about 2 million.
All right, so you want to go for the nice round number of 2 million,
That's only 2.
2%.
2%. Any questions for Dennis on that?
None for me.
Will you, will that require, go ahead.
I think we need more money. And I guess part of it is the way part of it is a percentage and part of it is how we intend to spend it, if we intend to spend it right now. So I don't know if you want to separate those two.
Yeah, I agree with Kathy. I think that's probably a good philosophy to go into next year's budget cycle or this coming year's budget cycle with, but I just want to make sure that, it's not like money falling from the sky. So we obviously had a budget in place. I think we're tracking well towards it. I would propose that we implement this for the go forward, next year's fiscal budget.
In other words, not appropriate any of the 5.7 million under this current fiscal year?
Unless it was previously budgeted, correct?
My only concern, I know that there are a few staff members, Mr. Jay Parker in particular, our CTO, that has expressed some concerns about statewide testing this year and our current student devices. And he's raised that to a level that I feel like the February Finance Committee, we need to bring that to y'all's attention. And ultimately, the board can decide if we want to spend a certain amount of dollars from this unassigned fund balance that we currently have. But our intent beyond that, at least my intent, is beyond that pressing need, is to not spend any of this current fund balance unless we have an absolute emergency. We want to keep 90% of it saved. But that is the only emerging non-budgeted issue that, as Jay has come in as our CTO, has recognized as an emerging need to get to prior to the testing window in May. But of course, if we needed to spend the money on that, I would bring that recommendation to the SPTT committee and to the finance committee for approval or for not approval.
And I guess that's fine. It just, I guess we had talked in the past, and this is probably a year ago now, about a refresh for 9 through 12 or 6 through 12 or whatever it is. If we're going to do that, then we need to include that with the laptops. We're leasing them, we're buying them, we're doing all that, but I'll leave that to SPIT. That's not my committee. So, but that's just my thoughts on it. The finance committee or facilities committee gave up $3 million in capital projects last year. So if you want to talk emerging needs, we have needs that we pushed off to year 2, that if we have the money for. We also have bond projects that are going to be very tight in this environment. And we have a budget to bring in. We have House Bill 13. We have, I mean, a lot of stuff coming at us, and a budget that we have to deliver to the county commissioners in just a couple months. And it just worries me to be spending the money ahead of that. But
Yeah, Dennis, refresh my memory, please. So we get what, $2 to $3 million a year from the county in you know, the, what do you call it, the liquor tax and all that stuff, basically I guess to fund our fund balance, right?
yeah, it's
So-
It's
less
like
than that.
780,000.
780,000. That's the fines and
That's fines
forfeitures
and forfeitures and ABC
liquor tax.
revenue.
Okay, but what about the overages and the anticipation? So it's anticipated that 90-something%
That's
of
the
taxes
true
are
up.
paid.
Yeah.
That's
the
capital.
true up.
True up.
That's
a
different.
different item.
That involves your ad valorem property taxes. That's
Right, but that also goes into fund balance, correct?
No,
No,
That's
no.
capital funding.
that's capital
Yeah.
funding.
a separate pot.
That's why it took a lot of years to build up this pot at 780 a year.
So if we're talking about 2 million or 2%, that means we're going to basically leave 2 million. We don't want to go below a $2 million balance in that unless there's a case of an extreme emergency. Is that what
Yes,
I'm
sir.
hearing with that $2 million figure?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. So if we feel comfortable with that, in theory, whether we decide to do it right now or even a portion of it, we're in excess of that benchmark by some $3.7 million. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So what I'm hearing two different things. Maybe we should, well, the overall philosophy, let's hold on, as Kathy mentioned, all these different moving parts to a little closer to next fiscal year and see what's going on. And Dr. Houlihan has raised through our IT folks that feel before that period of time, the need for an appropriation, which was originally looked at for some $1.1 million in Chromebooks. That was on the proposed, that we were originally given the proposed fund balance figures. 1.1 million for Chromebooks is, I believe that was the need that was expressed for lost and damaged and for testing. Is that the number that Jay's giving you?
That was combined, but the main issue he wants to get the computers for us for the testing.
Okay.
So we
Don't
could
have
split
a
that number.
one-on-one? I mean, I'm confused. Every kid has a Chromebook, right? 3 through 12. Well, how do we not have enough for testing?
It's my understanding that if we have middle or high school kids that are testing at the same time and they have a damaged or a device that is not working appropriately, what I understand is that in years past, they have gone to elementary schools during that testing window, borrowed those laptops, taken them to the middle and high schools to let them be used. This year, because the testing windows are so tight, which is not normal, you're having 3rd through 12th grade testing right around the same time. And that's usually not the case. It's usually staggered. And that's why Jay has said he'd like to, because of our devices that we own currently that we cannot get fixed in time or replaced in time. He's just concerned that we don't have enough excess. I think the 1.1, Mr. Sides, has come down. I think it's more close to $500,000. And so what I was saying is that my recommendation is that we don't spend any of the current fund balance at all because of the contingency on bond and other items that Ms. Heintel said, except for if we believe this testing issue is a real need, then that would be the only thing that I would come back to the finance committee on during the current year.
Does everybody feel comfortable? We have a window if the decision is not made, because we're going to miss the February board meeting unless we move pretty fast here to get those things in time for testing.
I talked to
What's our
Jay
window?
about this yesterday. He said that if the finance and SPTT committee approved it and the full board in February and the full board approved it in March,
Okay.
the purchasing of it, then he has
Okay.
enough time before the testing window hits in May.
All
Okay.
we're asking for now is the $500,000 for Chromebooks for testing.
And don't quote me on the 500,000,
Yeah.
but I believe it's come down a little bit from the 1.1.
Okay.
And that would be it. I would not, staff and Mr. Covington and I do not have a recommendation beyond that for the current
Okay.
fund balance.
All right. Why don't we do this? Let's first of all see if we could. I think we feel like we have some extenuating circumstances right now until we get to the next fiscal year, as far as uses for this fund beyond what Dr. Houlihan's talking about. Just as a general consensus, overall moving forward, does not this particular the rest of this particular fiscal year, but moving forward as a general philosophy, do we feel comfortable with that 2% or that $2 million, all things being equal, baseline for retaining in our fund balance account?
I guess, can we put that off and just make a determination to go to the SPIT committee to determine what they need, what the needs are for laptops for the coming year? Because Dr. Houlihan just indicated that he thinks he's good for the year.
Okay.
And we'll take up this stuff in the budget, but they need the laptop. So I think I would prefer to put off the discussion of what we would do until we look at the budget and everything as a whole. I'm not saying I'm opposed to 2%. I'm just saying.
You're saying it's not
talk
necessary
about it,
right now
but
to do
I think
it.
SPIT should
Okay.
determine what you guys need from a computer perspective. Joe and Leslie are both on SPIT. So what do you guys
Okay.
think?
You think, is that a better approach?
Yeah, no, I like the philosophy. I would just add that I don't think we should hastily get to that 2 million if we don't need to.
Exactly.
So if it's
Right.
over 5 now, I don't
Right.
think we have a free for all for the 3 unless we actually need it. I think it's probably a good target to get to, but I don't know that we have to get there for next year's budget either.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
Then let's just, we'll take no action on actually determining a target at this point. Discuss the additional Chromebook issue and revisit that as appropriate on what they decide. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm good with that.
Yeah,
Joe?
yeah.
And yeah. Leslie, you good with that?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm good.
All right. Okay. So we'll basically take no action at this point. All right. We'll move on to the next one, HB 13 estimated cost.
In talking with staff, we've determined that the only cost that we're going to have would be the hiring of the 64 positions and possibly some startup classroom costs, depending on how many we will have to stand up. But as far as mobiles or facility costs, we will have none. So it's about $3.5 million for the 64 positions.
By classroom startups, you mean empty classrooms don't have anything in them?
Yes.
Desk, chairs,
Furniture,
what have you.
resources, classroom
Resources,
libraries,
yeah.
et cetera.
Okay.
So you're anticipating the total cost of 3.5 or just
No,
the personnel
That's
cost?
the personnel cost.
Do you have a feel for startup costs yet?
No, they probably run about $5,000 a classroom,
Okay.
depending on how many you would have to stand up for those 64 positions.
64. So, okay. All right. So this is, yeah. So we're really looking at a total of 4.
million.
All right. So my reason for requesting this information is as we are in the development of next year's budget, the question, and somebody stop me if I'm off here, but the question would be, where does this $4 million come from? It either comes from cutting something we have now, increased state funding, which, okay, somebody give me an update on that. Or number 3, without an increase in the ad valorem tax rate, the increase in our portion of the budget, the local budget, to be able to cover this. Does that make sense?
We should have the increase in the ad valorem tax. Right?
Well, that was going to be my next question to Dennis. Are you getting any feedback from the county finance department yet, or is it too early that he was
I
talking.
spoke with Jeff on Friday, and no, they have no estimate yet of what the penny value would be.
Okay. All right. So am I pretty much on base there though? Is that's if we have that growth just from maintaining the same tax rate, but growth in the overall county revenue of ad valorem taxes, that's where we're hoping this would come from to cover this? Or is staff anticipating cuts in other areas in order to help fund this? Or are we just going to, I assume we're not going into it with our fingers crossed that something's going to change with HB 13.
We are going down the road of planning on the implementation of House Bill 13.
Okay.
I know that the legislature is not going to take it up in the session right now. There is discussion at the state level about whether or not this will come up in the longer session that will begin in April or May. I will tell you, this will, in moving forward as a budget priority, this will be my number one priority in terms of finding the funding to pay for these additional teachers. And whether or not we find it within our own budget currently, or let me start there. Finding the 3.5 or 4 million in our current budget and cutting that on top of what we cut last year. Because we cut a significant amount of money last year to help pay for other priorities like the SAT, the PSAT, helping our lowest performing schools. I'm going to have a very difficult time, I feel, in trying to find that kind of cut again. We're going to try to, but I will tell you, this may be a situation where, as superintendent, I will make a recommendation to the board that as we make our budget proposal, we may try to see if the county can help us out a little bit with the additional funding. Where that comes from, I don't know, but that is something that I would say that as of today in January, that's kind of where I see things going.
Mm-hmm.
But we are going to go through another modified zero-based budgeting process with staff and try to see what we can find within our own budget to maybe offset a little bit of that.
And what we have to remember too, looking in budget season, is that we cut back $3 million in capital funding, but next year's, if we end up doing any sort of refresh, 612, 912, whatever it is, that's in addition to what our capital budget was last year, depending whether we lose it or whatever we're doing. So that's going to be an additional over and above last year's budget.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And iPads and whatever else goes into that.
Just to summarize for anyone who may be watching and to bring this all back around, HB 13, the legislature has given to all public schools for smaller classroom size. And as Dr. Houlihan said, the effects here at UCPS would entail us creating an additional 64 positions. Now, there are some schools around the state, some school systems that are having to find additional classroom space. And we are on the luckier end of the curve, and that is not the biggest challenge for us.
Well, the realignment process will help a lot with that.
So we're having to physically find 64 more teachers and fund those positions and set up those classrooms, additional classrooms, in order to meet this legal requirement that we've been given. To date, if the state has, I don't know where that funding is to specifically address this issue for us. So that means we have to address it in our local funding, which is provided by Union County taxpayers in your property taxes, of which the piece that the school system gets from our county government. The operational piece, which we use for various other worthwhile purposes now. So as Dr. Houlihan's saying, somehow we've got to come up with this money. And unless we want to infringe on some of the things we started last year to address some of these other needs, then we're going to have to basically, there will have to be additional revenue that we hope the county's overall increase in revenue because of the economy and growth and other factors will be able to address. and not affect the overall tax rate that we receive. But it's too, as Dennis said, it's too early in the process. We don't have those projections together yet. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So,
And just to reiterate what Mr. Sides has said, to be clear, the additional 64 classroom teacher positions will also mean that we would not have to eliminate art, music, or any other specialty classes that I believe are part of a whole child well-rounded education. And so that's a good thing. But you've got a double whammy here, in my opinion. One is finding the funding to pay for this. I do not see it coming from the state. The second is finding the actual teachers. In a national teacher shortage, benefiting the beneficial part for Union County is our school system is one of the highest performing in the state. And we have a really, we don't have as challenging of a time as recruiting people that want to come work here because it's an excellent school system. But still, finding 64 elementary K through 3 teachers is going to be a challenge when you've got other systems that have to find 200, 400, in the hundreds of positions. So that will be an HR recruitment challenge that's also part of this.
Does anyone else on the committee have any comments on this item? Okay.
I don't.
Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, capital funding, estimated true up. Dennis, does the county finance department have any estimates on this yet?
Not an estimate. I have the true number.
Ooh, even better.
It's $3,145,443.
Go by that one more time. 3 million.
3,145,443.
All right. Have you had any luck with discussions with the county on us getting a portion or all of this prior to the next fiscal year?
No, sir, I have not approached Jeff with that subject.
Okay. Here's our reasoning to revisit this, and Kathy, jump in because it would be a capital item. But if, as in past, the true up funding has been provided as part of the, if you will, the next fiscal year budget. The problem with that is summer's almost over. So we lose all the opportunity to do capital improvements that are necessary while the students are not attending school. So that puts it back to either Christmas break, if it can be done, or spring break, or the next summer. We basically lose months. If we can receive this funding, say towards the end of the third quarter of the fiscal year, then finance and our appropriate departments can make and get projects lined up to be shovel ready for when the kids are out of school in June. So I have a feeling that's going to take a direct appeal to the commissioners in order to try and make this happen. I don't know what kind of, I know this is a change from the past, the way it's been handled. I don't know if there could potentially be any legal roadblocks or anything that prevents us from doing this if we just ask. Has anything been indicated to you, Dennis?
No, sir, but I would give staff at the county a call today when I get back to the office.
we just, so you know, we've asked them before and the answer's been no, multiple times. So we would have to talk to facility staff. I mean, we already have stuff lined up for the coming summer. I don't know if we could actually, if it would actually be able to get the projects done. We do have a lag time because you have to put bids out, you have to put stuff out. I don't know, but we have asked them before and the answer's been no. So I don't want you to go in there and not.
So do you all want me to ask?
I think we should ask our staff internally first and see if we have, like Kathy says, do we have the capacity, if we do go ask and we get approval, last thing we want to happen is everybody says, well, I'm sorry, we're full up already. We can't do it even if we wanted to. So I would
I
suggest
get
we
with
go
Mark's
to,
team and
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
get an update on that
That would be
before
great. I will do
approaching
that.
the county.
And to determine, given the number that Mr. Covington mentioned, what would be the priority that staff might recommend to the facilities and our finance committee as to what that would go towards? I mean, have we already identified
And
that? I
I
don't
guess
know yet.
that's a good question.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a good question, because in the past, they want it designated for a specific project. So it was for Benton Heights one year. This past year, it's Monroe Middle School, so we would have to designate something for that. And we haven't even come up with our capital budget for next year yet, but I'm sure Mark and Dave could give you a better answer to that than I could.
do you think some of the projects from the capital funding that was diverted last budget would be the place to start as far as picking up where we left off?
We
If you
could, or
will.
there may be something that's come up since then that's even more critical.
Okay.
So I would ask,
Yeah.
I would
if you
rather
talk to
approach
Mark,
staff,
yeah,
Yeah.
see what their priority is.
because
There
they
you go.
do like to assign it to specific projects.
If there's specific projects they feel like we have the additional capacity to get done, if you had the money and identification of those projects, and to really confirm that approval for that funding in, say, the end of the third quarter would expedite those projects being done during the summer break, then we can move forward addressing the county. Okay? All right. Anything else on that item? All righty, we'll move on next meeting. The fourth Tuesday will be February 27th, and we're going to experiment with an 8:30 starting time. And if we find that doesn't work out best next time for Joe, then we'll jump back to the 8 o'clock and we'll make it work. Does that work for everybody?
Yep, works for me.
Okay. All right. Any other business come before the committee?
None here, sir.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Leslie
Second.
made the motion and Joe seconded. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.